discuss is the summary exercise. Last time that we were all together in class, you guys completed that CRT. We know now that our final assessment for the end of the semester is that CRT assessment. So I do want to kind of review skills such as annotation, skills such as summary, because you guys will be assessed on that for that week 15 final assessment. So let me pull up something on the screen really quickly. Let's see. All right, bear with me just 1 second, you guys. I have another student who is attempting to come in. Give me 1 second. Are here. All right, so can you guys see this on the, oh, that's Angela. Hold on. I keep losing them. I'm sorry. Somebody's like ringing the doorbell and I keep losing them. All right, bear with me. So can you guys see the rubric? Does this rubric look familiar with for you guys?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does.
All right. I just enabled the microphone. So you guys see how it's typing everything that I'm saying? It's going to get crazy. But let me show you guys something with this. Okay, for the summary writing and for the annotation, you guys are being held to certain standards, right? Criteria. So we've gone over this in class before, but when we received the homework assignment of annotating Amy Tan's mother tongue, I was really hoping to get a chance for us to revisit this criteria. So I did get a chance to look at a couple of students who submitted their summaries. So I want to again go over the criteria, and then I want us to take a look at building our own summary. So let's take a look at the criteria established here. For the CRT, the practice CRT we took in class, you guys were allowed to use this rubric as a tool to help you kind of outline your own summary. So we know that every summary must include the author's name, type of text, whether it's an essay, an article, and the title clearly stated in that first sentence. Now, this is a review. You guys have heard this before. We also know the criteria will require that the topic of the text and author's intent is specifically and accurately stated, okay? We'll take a look at what that looks like in a sample. Another criteria, the main points should be summarized and focused on accurately. So you want to avoid irrelevant details. You want to avoid minor details or examples in the text. You only want to include in your summary key points, main ideas, and you want to make sure you summarize those accurately. I'm sorry, go ahead. Okay, my bad. The criteria also requires that, again, you guys stay away from insignificant examples or information, that the summary is free of personal opinion. You remember staying away from pronouns like I, we, or us, trying your best to avoid agreeing or disagreeing with it, with the text in your summary. And a major criteria with summary writing is to paraphrase. That means to take what the author has stated and to put it in your own words, using as few quotes as possible. So again, this is just a review of the guidelines. Let me pull up a sample summary to show you guys just how we incorporate these criteria. Okay, so pull something up here on the screen. All right, can we see this? Are you guys looking at a sample summary here?
Oh, no.
No.
Oh, you don't see it?
No.
Okay, hold on really quick. All right, trying one more time. All right, I see it. All right, can you guys see this sample summary here?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. When I was going through your practice midterm summary, I can tell that we have some understanding of the basic summary skills, but there are just a few criteria I want us to be reminded of and make sure we're studying when we're completing these assignments. First thing is with the summary we just read, it should always open up with introduction of the article or essay, title of that article or essay, and author's name. So I do like what the students submitted here in their sample. It's brief. A lot of the criteria is really being hit on here. But I just want to show you guys ways that we can improve or at least include certain criteria in order to produce a more effective summary. So what we know about writing, most summaries will be indented, okay? So you guys know before you start your summary to tab in, hit the tab, and it kind of takes it in those 5 spaces. So keep in mind, even if you're handwriting your summary, start your summary with an indentation, okay? Because it follows that paragraph format. All right. Now, even though there's nothing wrong with this first sentence here, the article Mother Tongue by Amy Tan is about, and then it starts to elaborate on the main idea. Try to utilize a template, if you will, in terms of how you structure your summaries. So let's just look at this. Uh-oh. I'm trying to treat my computer like it's a touch screen. All right. In the article, Mother Tongue by Amy Tan, instead of saying it is about, now I did notice this in the practice CRT, some students will say in the article, Mother Tongue by Amy Tan, she talks about, or she says. One main goal I want you guys to consider is the use of strong verbs. So let me attempt to remind you guys of the criteria that says the topic of the text and the author's intent should be specifically and accurately stated. So the way that we do that, let me kind of go back to my last page. Uh-oh. Sorry, okay. So where we say in the article, Mother Tongue by Amy Tan, let's say she examines, okay? Remember how we talked about the use of strong verbs. Does anyone remember the list, the handout I gave you guys about summary writing? And in that handout, it gave a list of strong verbs, right? So instead of saying in the article the author talks about or the author says, I want to encourage you to use those strong verbs. The author argues, the author demonstrates, the author discusses, but let's avoid, if we can, the author says, the author states. And I know you guys don't have the practice CRT in front of you, but if you remember from the feedback, I circled every time someone said the author says or the author states. We want to move beyond that in college level readiness and use those strong verbs. So let's look at this first line. In the article Mother Tongue by Amy Tan, she examines how there are many different types of English. Let me ask you guys this. Do we all agree that the main idea of that text is her discussion of different Englishes? I see you shaking your head, Daniel. What do we all think? Can we verbalize? If you can, if you don't have your mic on, let me head shake, but how many of you guys agree? Do we agree that the main idea of the Amy Tan article is her discussion of the different uses of English?
Yeah.
So,
All right. I'm getting I'm seeing people's heads. Okay, awesome. That is her main point. We know this by how she outlined the article in first introducing herself and her expertise. She laid out her love of language, and then before she went into her essay or really dove deeper into her subject matter, she let us know that she was intrigued by the different Englishes that she uses throughout her life. So it was all about the use of different Englishes. You guys want to make sure that main point is clearly and accurately stated in that first line of your summary. So some of you have your summaries in front of you. Take a look at that opening line. In the opening line, it should include title of the text, author's name, and a use of a strong verb to lay out the author's main idea. So first sentence, in the article Mother Tongue by Amy Tan, she examines, that's our strong verb, how there are many different types of Englishes. And I'm going to just kind of cut it off here. Now, I do like that on this student sample, the student said, and how even if someone English isn't perfect, it doesn't mean they are not smart. That is a good, important point. But I do think we could perhaps add this as an additional sentence of detail, okay? But for that first opening sentence, we have the title, author's name, use of our strong verb, and setting up the main idea, okay? I think if we practice to always begin our summary in the same way, it takes some of the anxiety and pressure off of us to perform every time we write a summary. You don't really have to reinvent the wheel every time you write it. We can follow the same format. First sentence, you've already marked off 3 of your criteria in this first sentence. You've identified main idea, you used a strong verb to do so, and it begins with author name and title of text. That's already 3 criteria you've marked off the list within that first sentence, okay? So then we, using transition words, we then begin to lay out the author's main key points, okay? So in the text, Amy Tan talks about different Englishes. We know she lays out a familiar English, that's the one she uses at home with her family. And she also talks about the professional English, the one she uses with her colleagues and people within a business setting. So let's think about how we can lay out these details. Let's see. She examines how there are many different types of English. What do you guys think should be our next sentence here? What could we add to kind of help us organize the details as they're outlined in the text? What else should we add next?
I was thinking on how she translated everything for her mother.
Okay. All right. So let's say Tan explains and okay, so and this is still going to take on the point that was just stated, but let's look at how this is organizing the details. Tan explains how she uses a familiar and a professional form of English in her everyday life. Let's say the English she remember the words she used, you guys, in the text when she was describing how her mother spoke. Did she refer to her mother's form of English or her familiar style of English as broken?
If I remember correctly, she said she doesn't like calling it broken, but that's the only word she could think of to use.
Okay,
she doesn't
I
like
thought
that
so.
word being used.
Yeah, she either said broken or fragmented. You guys remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay, good. I just want to make sure, because we don't want to deviate at all from what the author meant or what the author was accurately implying. So the next sentence, the familiar English that she uses with her family is oftentimes considered broken. And her family mother is sorry, you guys. I'm thinking about it as I'm writing it, but I'm kind of freestyling it. So I'll share out. The familiar English she uses with her family is oftentimes considered broken. Oh, I added in her family. Especially her mother is judged and discriminated by her use of this broken English. Should we say that? Her mother is oftentimes considered broken, and especially her mother was judged and discriminated I'm just going to say who's judged and discriminated against. So in terms of the chain of events that goes on in the story, most of the details and examples that Amy Tan includes is all about her mother. Do we agree with that?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's all about her mother. So I wanted to make sure her mother is mentioned in the summary, okay? Again, we are kind of taking a look at the details we've been given, and we want to summarize, paraphrase them, and outline them accurately in our summary. So the discussion of the familiar English, which is a type of English she examines in her essay, is often considered broken, especially her mother. Now, I know the language may be a little bit off. Her mother, who is judged and discriminated against. We know some examples she outlined in the text was that her mother was often discriminated against on the telephone. I think it was when she would talk to her bank, right, you guys?
That one time at the hospital.
The hospital, right. The hospital, we know. Also with her her broker. Do you guys remember the broker? What was another key detail from the text that kind of explains how her mother is judged or discriminated against? I need you guys' help in building this.
I think a great detail is from how Amy, at a younger age, didn't like her own mother's English because she was just in the text. She says she used to be ashamed of her mother's English because she thought it represented her mother's intelligence.
Okay.
But now she knows that's not true.
Okay, I like that. And you did include that. I saw, for those of you who submitted your summaries as well, I did see that major point included. So I'm glad you pointed that out, Benito. I'll say, as a young girl, Amy Tan recognized the limitations of her mother's use of English. Okay. So I'll just kind of add that detail to a point that the student sample already included. It said one of Tam's examples is how her mom is very smart. She reads Forbes, listens to Wall Street Week, and is always talking to her stockbroker. But because her English is broken, people think she isn't smart. This is true, but I've stated that a little bit earlier, so I'm just going to take this last part out. And just like a essay or a paragraph always needs some type of conclusion, I want you guys to be mindful that your summary should also end with a conclusion. There should be a concluding sentence that points to how the essay or article itself wrapped up. So what closing statement can we add here that perhaps could adequately you know, perhaps let's say summarize the main points by the author here. What do you guys think about what we have so far? And tell me, what do you think I should add here in terms of key detail? And I know I have some errors here that needs to be corrected, but we're drafting now. We'll come back and correct. All right, so what do you guys think about what we have so far? Based on your reading, is this accurate? Should I add something? What do you think? Shouldn't say Englishes. Okay. I'm just waiting on the word from you guys. Either thumbs up is good, or kind of help me by throwing out something else we want to make sure we include. You see, okay, let me read it one more time. In the article Mother Tongue by Amy Tan, she examines how there are many different types of English. Tan explains how she uses a familiar and professional form of English in her everyday life. The familiar English she uses with her family is oftentimes considered broken, especially, and I'll say her mother's use, which is judged and discriminated against. As a young girl, Amy Tan recognized the limitation of her mother's use of English, but learned that it did not determine her mother's intelligence. One of Tam's examples is how her mother is very smart. She reads Forbes reports, listens to Wall Street Week, and is always talking to her stockbroker. Those are our good paraphrased details. Good. What else should we add? What do you guys think?
For another main idea, or for like the conclusion?
For like the conclusion, do you guys feel in having read it, having been familiar with it as you are, based on your understanding of the text, am I leaving anything out? What do we think?
I think one of the more important parts of it is that her mother gave her her love of the English language.
Yes, I like that. Let me see how to state this. One of Tan's example is how her mother. Okay, all right, so all right, good feedback. I like that, Benito. Tell me what you guys think about this last line. Now, as a world-renowned writer, because Amy Tan, she wrote the Joy Luck Club. She is a New York Times best-selling author. So I included that little tidbit of information about her. Now, as a world-renowned writer, Amy Tan credits her mother with her love of language. And because that was included in the text, it definitely fits here in this summary. So let me just stop here. I kind of won't pressure you guys any further about what to add, but in constructing your own thesis, in constructing your own summary, I hope that in kind of modeling the process, you guys are looking at how you yourselves write your own thesis, own summaries. I don't know why I want to talk about thesis so bad. Keep in mind the difference between a summary and an essay. A summary is simply a paraphrase, if you will, of the author's main points. You do not add to those points. You do not manipulate those points with your opinion. You stay objective. You almost operate as a newscaster who is just reporting the news, right? So this is us just reporting the news about Amy Tan's essay, Mother Tongue. I think we did a good job of sticking to the criteria. We opened up with the title, author's name, use of a strong verb. We then went point by point into some of the key details that Amy Tan laid out in her article. But you guys see how the summary is brief. We didn't have to write a page about this. We did not have to go into every detail or example, because there were more examples than this, right? But we only wanted to stick with what key details fell in line with that main idea. And as long as you guys stick with that criteria, practice that criteria, study it, I think you will see your grade in summary writing improve. You guys, like I pointed out earlier, for the midterm, we did well. I think we had a lot of pass minuses, some people who fell on the borderline, but definitely practice following that format. Let me pull up for you guys one more time the criteria, just so you stay mindful of that. Oh, it looks like I deleted it. All right. I'll post this to Brightspace. A lot of you guys have it already in your English 96 folders. I'll just post it as a resource. But remember the summary guidelines. I saw a lot of homework turned in with your annotations of mother tongue as well. Make sure you are familiar with the annotation guidelines as well. So far, I like what I see from what you guys submitted with that. Try to stay consistent with the guidelines for both annotation and summary. So if you haven't finished your summary for mother tongue, hopefully what we talked about will help you guys to execute a little bit better. I'm working on now a plan to share feedback with you guys, how to score your homework that you turn in, how to give you feedback and advice and get it back to you in a timely fashion. I'm working on that. I know I can snap pictures and shoot it to you as email, but I want to find a more easier to read way for you guys as well. So I'll follow up with you guys about that, but make sure you're getting the homework in as soon as you can, okay? So were there any questions there? Did you guys have any questions about summary writing at all? If you haven't finished the assignment, use the guidelines. Focus on being brief, staying within a paragraph. Focus on using the author's name. Tan said, Amy Tan. For the practice CRT, a lot of you guys were using the author's first name. We don't want to use the author's first name in formal writing. You want to stay formal. Last name Tan examines, Tan discusses. You don't want to say Amy discusses. That's kind of an informal tone. Okay. So try to stay mindful of that. Something else to pull up. Let me pull up Brightspace. How have you guys been doing with getting your Brightspace messages, taking a look at information posted to Brightspace? Are we doing okay with that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, let me pull up something. I recently added a resource page. So we have a pretty good class today. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 is awesome. We have 14 people in the class, so 10 is definitely a majority. I'm glad you guys are all here. Some of you guys came in while I was talking. If you have any questions, and we talked about this last Wednesday, use the chat, because I know some of you, I remember you from class, wink, wink. Some of you don't always feel comfortable speaking up directly, but you can use the tool here on Zoom. You can just, no one else will see it but me. Whatever question you add in our chat, if perhaps you had a concern that you wanted to share, but maybe you're on mute, maybe your use of Zoom doesn't allow you to, use the group chat, you guys. Sometimes I can't see everybody on the screen at once. Sometimes you may have something to add. I don't want to feel like I'm not engaging with you all. I see you all. I'm happy you're all here. But to make sure I don't miss you, either raise your hand, wave at me on video if you need me to slow down or have a question, or use the chat. Okay. So with that being said, let me pull up our Brightspace page. Because I want to show you guys something that I added that I didn't get to talk to you guys about on Monday. It's under content. All right, student resources. Did you guys get a chance to see this slide on Brightspace under our course content? Did anybody get a chance to look at the student resources? I see some heads shaking yes. This is just important enough that I want to pull it up so that we don't miss it, but it's going to be very brief. I'm going to move past this quickly. But so much information here. I have a lot of students, not so much in this class, but in my other classes, who are struggling with computer access, and Malcolm X has been shipping to everyone who needs them, laptops and other resources. So I wanted to just quickly show you guys that this is here, but I don't want to go through all of it.
Oh yeah, I see that.
You guys do remember this? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so with this particular resource, it is laying out all resources Malcolm X is providing during the COVID-19 social distancing. So I asked you guys previously, how was your access? Did you have technology? Would you have trouble staying engaged in class? The majority of you guys answered, but if you are struggling to make it work, with us having about 4 or 5 more weeks left of class, let me know as soon as you can, sooner rather than later. The loaner laptop program, all they need you to show is that you need it. From there, they mail it to you. You don't even have to go on campus, and the loaner laptop has hotspot availability. So it doesn't matter if you have internet or Wi-Fi or anything like that. It comes equipped. Okay. You guys are Zoom professionals. I'm so happy to know that. I'm still a little rocky, but if you need access, if you need help with Zoom, I included a resource. Look, this is who I borrowed this from, my colleague, Rachel. Tutoring appointments, they are setting those up this week. Now, I know you guys are like, how in the world can I get tutoring done if I'm not on campus? They have been doing Zoom tutoring. So we do have another paper assignment coming up. We haven't had a chance yet to talk about writing, essay development. You guys haven't got your revised essays back, but I do want us to spend time talking about that today and on Wednesday. So just be mindful. You guys have tutors, and all of this is listed here for you. So just make sure you guys are checking that out. Another thing I wanted to cover, let me go back. I wanted to quickly go over the homework on run-ons and fragments. And I know you guys are like, Ms. Cole, we get it. We know run-ons and we know fragments, but because we've been away from each other for about a week and a half, 2 weeks, I just wanted to review again you guys' understanding of run-ons and fragments. So I'm sorry to keep scrolling up and down. I'm trying to think of where to go for this content. Hold on.
So we still have the chance to turn in the summary and the fragments and run-ons, correct?
You do, yes you do. I did kind of take a survey at the start of our Zoom meeting where I kind of asked people who had submitted certain work already.
I did it.
So
I did it.
Okay, so I know all of you, not everyone has completed it. So it's okay if you haven't done the summary yet or the run-on, you guys will still have time. And that's why I'm only going to go over a portion of the run-on fragment. I don't want to go through that thoroughly since some of you guys are still working on it. So let me pull that up. Here it is. I think that's, look, I think that's birds I hear. Look, does someone have their birds?
Mm-hmm.
It's so cool. I know in all my other Zoom meetings, that I've been having. They've been having us share our pets. I'm just glad my pet is quiet right now. All right. All right, bear with me just a second to download this, you guys. Are you guys seeing on the screen right now the bright space window?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. All right, so you guys were asked on a separate sheet of paper to take this paragraph. It says rewrite the 2 paragraphs. This is 1 paragraph, and correcting all fragment and run-on errors. First of all, before we go over the first few sentences of this, I want you guys to think of or consider the definition of run-ons and fragments, and also what we know about how to correct them. So before you guys attempt to complete this assignment, think about, what do I know about a run-on sentence? What is a run-on sentence? And from that, what do I do to correct a run-on sentence? So can someone help me out with quickly defining a run-on sentence? I heard somebody say 2 sentences. I hear it. But what else? And I see you, Benito. You've been kind of driving these discussions. I appreciate you. But did anybody else want to?
Is it like
try to
saying the
calculate?
same thing over and over?
You said saying the same thing over and over?
Yeah, kind of.
It's somewhat that, because a run-on sentence is conversational in tone. So
No punctuation.
oh, I like that. Exactly. It's conversational in tone, but it's when we attempt to write complete sentences without proper punctuation. So I like that. Shouting out whoever mentioned that run-ons are characterized by lack of punctuation. So if you guys are looking for a textbook definition, 2 or more complete ideas fused together in 1 sentence without proper punctuation. So in proofreading this, whenever we identify a run-on, we want to make sure we add proper punctuations. For fragment sentences, how would you guys define a fragment sentence?
Incomplete sentence.
That's right. It's an incomplete sentence. When you read a fragment sentence, and this is why I tell you all to make sure you proofread your papers. When you read a fragment sentence, you will know right away something is amiss here. Your eyebrows should raise. There's questions that are raised when you encounter an incomplete sentence. Either you're asking who or what because it's lacking a subject. Either you are unsure about what's going on in the sentence because it's lacking a verb, or it just doesn't have enough information to express a complete thought. So know what a fragment is. When you proofread, just like we're asked to do with this assignment, you can make the corrections by adding the information. So let's look at this really quickly, and bear with me. I'm navigating through multiple screens, so give me just 1 second. I want to copy this and put it in a Word document. All right, bear with me, guys. Okay, now let me share out what I have.
Ms. Cole, may
Yeah.
I went to the restroom very quick?
Sure you can, absolutely. All right, so because I know we all haven't completed this as of yet, I just want to maybe perhaps take a look at the first couple of sentences, just so you guys can make sure you're on the right track with this. So knowing what we know about run-ons and fragments, look at this first sentence. Maintaining a healthy diet can be difficult. Is this a correct and complete sentence based on what we know? If you guys are proofreading it, we're taking it sentence by sentence. Is this first sentence correct and complete?
Incomplete?
Is it correct and is it complete?
Oh, correct.
I say yes.
Okay, I hear a yes. What else?
Yeah.
I see
Yes.
yes. Okay, good. Maintaining a healthy diet can be difficult. That's a complete sentence. Let's take a look at the next one. For some college students. Is this operating as a correct and complete sentence?
No.
For some college students is a fragment sentence.
No.
No, it's incomplete.
No. It's incomplete.
It's incomplete, right? And we know that a fragment sentence is an incomplete sentence, right? So this is a fragment. And what we would do to fix this is we want to connect it to or else add information to make it a complete thought. So how did we fix this? For those of you who either have done this already or just knowing what you know about run-ons and fragments, how can we fix this incomplete statement?
Take something out or add.
I heard somebody say take something out or add. I think I heard you, Daniel. I'm not sure, say add. What do we think? You remember the rules? I'm sorry, say it again. I think that's you, Daniel. Say it again for me.
After the word difficult, we can just put that not and as semicolon.
Take the 4 out.
Okay, now that's one way to do it. That is one way to do it. But remember, one of the strategies we talked about in class would be to connect that fragment with an independent clause. Remember that being one of the strategies? So let's just try to connect this fragment to that complete sentence that comes before it, right? Maintaining a healthy diet can be difficult for some college students. Now,
correct.
Good. So you guys see how we took that fragment and we connected
Made it one sentence.
An independent clause, and we just made it a complete and correct sentence. Is anybody adding a comma here? Did anybody add a comma after difficult?
I thought about it.
I can see how you thought about it because for looks like an adjective. I mean, I'm sorry, the conjunction, right? So you would think you would add a comma here. I'm okay if you guys do not add a comma here, okay? Maintaining a healthy diet can be difficult for some college students. That is just complete and clear, okay? So we fixed that fragment. Let's take a look at this next sentence. First, there can be problems with being hungry in class. They may have to adapt to a new eating schedule. All right, tell me about this sentence. Are we identifying an error here?
First, there can be problems with being hungry in class.
Here, so I'll wait till you guys tell me what to do. What are we doing with this next sentence?
After class, there might be a comma maybe.
I'm sorry, say it one more time for me, Daniel.
After class, there may have to be a comma.
After class. Okay, I see. So he's identifying right here that there needs to be some kind of break. What do you guys think?
Correct.
Okay, so you see that what you identified, Daniel, is you identified the break between those two complete sentences that somebody tried to fuse into one sentence, but they're not utilizing proper punctuation. So we found the run-on. We kind of see where the break is here. And what that shows us is this is where the punctuation goes. So what do you think we should add here to correct this run-on error? Everybody don't talk at once. What about if I add a period, right? Remember that? Because we know one of the ways you can fix run-ons is with a period, with a semicolon. Remember the semicolon?
Yeah, the semicolon.
Or with a comma and conjunction. So you mentioned, Daniel, you said a comma, right? So let's say first there can be problems with being hungry in class, comma, and they may have to adapt to a new eating schedule. Okay, so we could do it that way as well. But whether you choose the period, the semicolon, or the comma and conjunction, we just corrected that run-on error. Okay, so good. We fixed that one. So do you guys see what we're doing here, or should I try to do the next sentence?
Yes, I see.
Let's take a look at this next one. Look, I just want to take a look at it real quick. It's going to kind of cut some of my time in class, but I'll try to move through it quickly. Let's look at this next sentence, you guys. Some students may think they can skip meals, so they try. How do we feel about this sentence? Is this correct and complete?
No.
No.
It's like, I'm kind of like, oh, some students may
I feel like
skip meals, so they try. It may be able to stand on its own, right? But so, okay, I'll kind of put a somewhat there. Look at the next one. To fight their hunger. Well, this is clearly a fragment sentence. Very seldom does a sentence begin with infinitive, to fight, right? We don't normally start sentences with to.
So you could take
we
that
know
period
this
out.
is incomplete in some way. So how about if we take this fragment here, and just like we did up here, we connect it to this
Connected to the other.
kind of sketchy sentence where it says, some students may think, oh, Jocelyn, some students may think they can skip meals, so they try. Let's take this period.
Period out. To
So
fight
they
their hunger.
So
It
they
sound
try
right, it's
to
like,
fight.
but they try.
Now,
That's
even though
correct.
we did fix that fragment, it's still now a compound sentence. And we're going to talk a little bit more about compound sentence. So I've had to add my comma by so. So some students may think they can skip meals, so they try to fight their hunger. So you guys see how we took that fragment and we corrected that error.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you guys are still working on this, for the rest of this assignment, you will just go through taking each sentence through a proofreading process. How do I identify what's wrong with it, and how do I correct it? Okay. So I'll let you guys go ahead and finish that on your own. Make sure that in getting that in and submitted to me, do your best to have it in by Wednesday. Okay. If you haven't done that summary, or if you haven't completed this exercise. Okay. Did you guys have any questions on this? I know we've talked about run-on and fragments sporadically, so it sounds familiar to you, but unless we're practicing and reviewing it, we may lose it. So practice this a little bit more, and make sure you guys are getting that into me, okay? All right.
Okay.
All right, awesome. It sounds like you guys know what you're talking about with the sentences. You just have to trust yourself. I hear you guys like kind of whispering or not really wanting to speak up about what sentence it is, but trust yourselves. You guys seem to know what you're talking about here. Okay. All right. The reading. What did you guys think about the reading? The reading assignment. Do we judge people on the way they talk? What did you guys think about that assignment?
Wow. That was a good assignment.
Yeah. We know that our unit that we're working on right now is language and identity. A lot of times our identity is kind of taken out of our hands, right?
Right.
Some people can judge us based on how we talk and attach to that an identity. We saw that with Amy Tan's mother. They were taking her broken or fragmented use of English, and they identified her as ignorant or dumb, right?
Correct.
Even though that's not who she is at all. So this particular reading takes that idea of, first of all, do we judge? We know, yes, we do judge people based on how they talk, but I wanted to look at who's doing this judging, who actually gets to
Decide.
establish or assign who belongs and who doesn't belong, right? I'm curious about that, and that's what the webcast talked about. Let me try to pull this up as well. If you didn't get a chance to read, I don't want you guys to worry. I still want you to read. I absolutely do, but I am going to play the podcast for us here. So if you have your books, try to follow along. What I like about this podcast is as we're learning to become stronger readers and writers, this is a strategy to where if you know you struggle with reading, a strategy could be get the Audible book or listen to it in audio and read. It always really helps for me to hear it. I catch things sometimes that I may miss in my reading. Did you guys see that at all? In trying to listen to it, read it, and listen to it at the same time. Did you guys notice that?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's helpful. It was helpful for me. So let me pull this up. All right, the text that's in the book came from this web page. So again, what you are about to listen to is similar to the text. They are slightly different. But if you've read it before, fine. If you've heard this already, that's okay. If you haven't, I want you guys to listen and really think about what we've discussed in class so far about language. Remember our discussion on good or bad English, how we judge others based on how they talk. I want us to talk a little bit more about that. So let me let this play for a minute and we'll open up discussion. I'm pausing it only just to let you guys know. This is audio only. Don't look to see a video. There's no video attached, okay? This is strictly from a radio podcast.
Michigan Radio, this is State of Opportunity. I'm Jennifer Guerra. When you hear my voice, chances are you might be forming some kind of opinion of me. What you think I look like, where I'm originally from, maybe even my education background. That's the beauty of radio. Voices get to take center stage, not images. But sometimes our biases against certain dialects and languages color what we hear. Now, it's not hard to find an example of people being judged because of the way they speak. Take the George Zimmerman trial. The primary witness was a young African-American woman named Rachel Chantel. She was Trayvon Martin's friend and was on the phone with him the day he died. Here she is testifying before a jury.
Creepy ass cracker. Okay. Creepy ass cracker.
The minute she opened her mouth, the critics went nuts. Chantel got slammed by the media and the general public for the way she spoke. One juror told CNN's Anderson Cooper that Chantel wasn't a credible witness, in part because of the way she spoke. Just one among many examples of how voice bias can have very real ramifications.
Who gets to decide they can police someone else's language? I mean, when did we get to this point that shaming people for their language is fine?
This is Robin Queen. She's a linguist, and she teaches a class at the University of Michigan called Language and Discrimination. Queen says people often think there is one right way to speak, what linguists call standard American English, or the standard, and everybody else is just doing it wrong. She says this kind of attitude is particularly troubling when it comes to kids.
If you get a kid who comes into the school who speaks natively a variety of English, let's say, that has some of the features that aren't part of the standard,
like using ain't in a sentence or double negative,
that kid is often assumed to be just willfully doing it wrong.
Now, Queen is not saying students should not learn the standard. The reality is standard American English is still the standard in the professional and academic worlds. But Queen says schools should appreciate linguistic diversity a little bit more and take a less punitive approach to teaching the standard.
Every time you try to say something, they got to correct every line you say. It's like, I don't want to talk to you now.
This high school student says he is all too familiar with being told he's doing it wrong in terms of how he talks. The young man participated in a Michigan State University linguistics study about language. He participated anonymously, so we cannot use his name on the air. Let me explain the study. Students at a Detroit high school were given two sets of sentences. One set was called Language A, the other Language B. Here is a sample sentence from Language A.
People be thinking teenagers don't know nothing.
For Language B, instead of
people be thinking teenagers don't know nothing,
the sentence would read, people think teenagers don't know anything, and so on. I'm going to let April Baker Bell, the researcher who conducted the study, take it from here.
I said, what I want you to do is respond to these language samples by drawing a picture of someone that speaks both of these languages and write a little bit about the speaker of the language. And that's exactly what the students did.
Here's where it gets interesting. The students, all of whom are Black, reacted negatively to language A.
Yeah, I had the person sagging here on the beater.
The student drew a not super flattering picture of a guy wearing saggy pants and a wife beater. He judged the African American English speaker way more harshly than he did the standard American English speaker, even though he himself speaks African American English. Linguist April Baker Bell says that has real-life consequences for those students.
What happens when students hold these negative attitudes toward their own language, it interferes with their language and literacy development.
You can see it play out in the test scores of African American students. So how do you erase decades of negative stereotypes surrounding African American English? Some experts say, start in the classroom. Tune in next week when we explore a new program that aims to teach language diversity starting at a very young age with kindergartners. With State of Opportunity, I'm Jennifer Guerra, Michigan Radio News.
All right, you guys. So as I'm reading it, as I'm listening to it on the podcast, I'm kind of taking a look at it in the text as well. And it does seem like they went word for word, but I was taking notes. So there's a couple things I want to talk about your reading and understanding of this. So I think I had asked a question for you guys to consider, right? But before I go into that question, what were some things that stood out from either your reading or, just your listening of this podcast? What were some things that maybe as you were listening, you understood, you saw, or you yourself had experienced? Maybe you saw it in the Amy Tan novel. What were some things that kind of stood out from the radio broadcast here? What do you think, Benito?
To me, it's when they had the student talk and he said, if y'all squint to me, I don't feel like talking.
Oh,
That's something I went through in school and this in everyday life where people kept correcting me, so I didn't really feel like talking to them.
Absolutely. We talked about that. I remember talking about that in class because as a teacher, I normally get students who have spent so much of their grammar school or high school education being silenced. And they're silenced in these subtle, subliminal ways like this, where either you're going to correct everything they say, right? Either there's some form of shaming or judgment involved with them expressing themselves. But you kind of see how, like you brought up, Benito, students internalize that. They internalize it. I made a note here. It said, they talked about how this judgment interferes with language development. Just like how you talked about how it forces you to stop talking at all. Well, when we're not talking, when we're not sharing those ideas, we're not developing, right? So it has this domino effect that is kind of at the heart at what they're trying to get at with this study with the linguists in Michigan. But yeah, that's a good point. What else? What else did you guys notice from the text or from the audio?
I noticed and stood out to me is when in the paragraph and the audio it was mentioning like how the speaker said the development of the way that we speak and stuff, how it develops different and how to, like, I guess, change it, like the way we speak.
Right. Yeah, so yeah, that's very similar to what Benito said, Daniel, how, and I like that they spoke to high school students. I really do, because I think a lot of that judgment can be wrapped with just how people treats the younger generation as well too. So you brought up, Daniel, how it interferes with development. I want to say not just in school, but social development as well. I'll see students who are in class, they are so quiet. They won't say anything. They won't contribute anything to class. And what they I think they don't realize, because they've been judged, they've kind of been told that their form of English is less valuable. What's missing is their voice, their ideas, what they bring to the table. Just like with Amy Tan's mother, she was being dismissed as though she didn't have anything to contribute, right? I feel that same, that's like the tragedy in this, in kind of the language police, and we'll talk about that, is they're taking voices away. They're taking that perspective or insight. And what I wanted to look at too was that question I had posed. Is it more important what's being said, or is it more important how it's being said? I guess that if we think about that, if we look at what we value, then I think we can begin to look at where this judgment comes from, right? So what do you guys think about the question? Is it more important what you have to say or how you say it? What do you guys think about that question?
How you say it.
How you say it. I heard someone say that. Who is that?
Marissa.
Okay, Marissa. Awesome. So you feel like how you say it is important. Now, why do you think it's more important how you say it? Like, why do you think that that's more important than the other, Marissa?
Because it shows like the person, how you say it is how they're gonna take it, kind of. I don't know how to explain it that well.
But I think I know what you're saying. I do think I know what you're saying. So you're saying that how they say it is how people are going to take it. But
And then you have to be really mindful of like how you say things, because some people are like more sensitive than others, you know?
Mm-hmm. I see what you're saying. Absolutely. How you say it. So you're looking at how you may come across.
Yeah.
Kind of being mindful of, your use of words and making sure you're not offending. That is important. I definitely agree with that. And I'm glad you explained it, because at first I was thinking you were saying making sure you talk in the standard edited English. Do you guys feel like if it's not stated in standard edited English that it's any less valuable or important than, let's say, something stated in informal English? What do you guys think about that?
Can you repeat that again?
Yeah, so in kind of just taking that question of, is it more important what is being said or how it's being said, do we feel that, like, let's say for instance, I'll give this example. If I stood up in front of the class talking to you guys in informal English, does it, let's say, diminish my credibility? Would you take what I have to say or have to teach you seriously if I'm using informal English? Like
now I would, but if it was the first time of the class, the first time I met you as a teacher, I'm not really sure if I would take the class all that seriously.
I see. Yes. Yeah. So
this is an English class.
Yes, absolutely. So they talked about in the article the credibility. They talked about how they felt that the young lady who took the stand in the George Zimmerman trial. Do you guys remember the Trayvon Martin shooting and the trial that followed? Because I know you guys are a lot younger than me.
I remember.
You guys remember this at all?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Do you guys remember? Okay, I heard you say you do, Angela. Do you remember Rachel Gentile and this whole debate that kind of sparked based on Rachel Gentile and her introduction in the trial?
Now, I never did watch the trial, but I remember seeing it on TV and stuff about it's going on, how he was shot, had some candy, and the officer had shot him, but I never did watch the trial.
Okay. So you kind of know what happened in the case, but with the trial, let me just give you guys some context really quickly. I know we got a couple minutes before class ends, but some context with this is Rachel Gentile was Trayvon Martin's friend. And do you guys know how language is influenced by environment? So what I mean by that is, do we all agree that the way a person who's from New Orleans or a person who's from Florida, how they will talk different from somebody who's from Illinois, or let's say someone from Indiana?
They do talk different because Southern people talk different from Northern people.
Absolutely. And when we say talk different, we don't mean that they're talking a different language. It's all
Right.
still English.
It's just the voice.
It's either their voice, their accent,
Yes, the accent.
how they pronounce it, right? That may change. But we all agree that that environment will change how a person speaks. Do we all agree with that?
Yes.
Have we ever come in contact with someone from Florida before?
Yeah.
Let me tell you something, not to offend any Florida people. It's very difficult for me to understand dialect from Florida. Do you guys agree with that?
I never really heard a Florida person talk. So
what do you think, Benito?
It was my sister, so it was kind of easy to understand my sister.
Okay,
but
because you got that family language going on, right?
Mhm.
But I know when I went away to college, I went to school in Nashville, and I came in touch with a lot of people from Alabama, Florida, and Georgia. I would a lot of times have to ask them to repeat themselves more than once for me to really grasp what was being said. That was my experience. So I just want you guys to think about that with Rachel Gentile. The world is watching her on stage, but she comes from Haiti, so she has an accent. She has an accent in how she speaks. And she's from Florida.
Wow.
So her dialect, her accent was very, very heavy. And it wasn't that she was saying or talking a different language. She was not.
Right.
But based on her accent, based on her dialect, her inflection, coming from South, her Southern drawl, people who watched her, they went crazy. They were like, oh my gosh, who put her on the stand? She sounds dumb.
I really didn't like that when I read that.
Yeah, it was horrible. What ended up getting the most talk in the news was how she spoke. That's all they talk about. They didn't talk about what she had to say. That's why I asked you guys.
Correct.
Is it more important what a person has to say, or is it more important how they say it? They judged her based on how she spoke.
It's more important what they said.
It was way more important than what information she was. Now, keep in mind, as a witness, she was on the phone with Trayvon Martin. And he was being pursued. So no one knew better than her what was happening. But they weren't trying to find out what happened. They just wanted to discuss how this young girl talked.
Yeah, but
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I feel like I said how they talk because I was thinking context of like.
Oh yeah, like I know exactly what you were saying, Marissa. You cleared it up.
Yeah, like kind of like breaking down like words to make them like some other meaning, kind of like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I knew exactly what you were saying. When I asked you to kind of clarify, you clarified perfectly. You were talking about use of language. Like I know exactly what you meant. So your response is different from what I'm talking about, because I knew what you were talking about with yours. You were talking about tone. You were talking about usage. So I know what this is different. This is discrimination. And the reason why I wanted to talk about it is because in my experience as a teacher, most of my students who has experienced this form of discrimination, similar to what Amy Tan talked about her mother went through in mother tongue, normally it is those students who speak English as a second language. Now, she's talking here about Rachel Gentile, and she's used a lot of examples about African Americans. I do want to clarify my experience as an English teacher. There is no such thing as African American English. It's all English. So it's either whether we're speaking formal, standard edited English, or are we speaking informal English, right? Amy Tan let us know there's different types of English. So yeah, there's a type of English I talk with my family. There's a type of English I may talk with my colleagues, but I'm not always speaking English, right? And even though I'm talking about English in this setting, we do know, for those of you who may speak other languages, that those same rules apply to any language, whether we are talking about French, whether we're talking about Spanish. I know in my early ignorance of the language Spanish, I used to assume that Spanish speakers all spoke the same form of Spanish. And it wasn't until I started going through college and being educated and meeting a different diverse group of people that I learned, even in Spanish, the languages depends on environment, right? It will change. There'll be subtle differences between how Spanish is spoken in Spain or Central America. I know they speak it differently, let's say in Argentina or Chile, than how Chile, and how it's spoken in, let's say, Texas or borders of Mexico, right? I know there's variations there. I know also to environment in terms of, let's say, the island of Puerto Rico, right? Even though it may be termed Spanish, there's different uses or accents, different dialects based on environment where you are, right? So everyone normally within a certain environment, they speak that familiar, right? Within our group, within our area, this is, our usage. Same is true with English. So where she mentions African American English, there may be what I call informal, the ain't, the use of double negatives. I ain't doing nothing. That's just grammatically incorrect, but it's not a different form of English. Do you guys see what I'm saying when I say that? It's all still English, but I digress a tad bit. I want you guys to pay attention to this idea of language bias. It's especially in the times we have been in lately, where there's been a lot of division, a lot of what I call triggers, people attempting to trigger fear and pointing out otherness. They've been using the tool of language to do this a lot of times. So I just want us to be aware. I too had to kind of take a look at how, as an English teacher, I sometimes can be a snob with English. And I had to really be careful with the correcting my students, really attempting to police standard edited English. For me, if I know what you're saying, if I know what you're trying to say, to me, that's more important than how you say it. But we do know, in terms of us being English students, in my efforts to get you guys college level ready, we want to be mindful of the standard, but I don't want any of us to shame or to be shamed by this judgmental form of policing language. You guys know what I mean with that? I know we are about a couple minutes past, so let me get ready to get you guys out of here. Did you have anything to share, Benito? Did I see your hand?
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say, I think the most important thing when speaking is that your idea gets across.
Yes.
And it's like not it, because yes, you gotta be careful with like the way you speak. So I'm including that in the thought too, that it's what's the most important is that what you're saying is heard, and how you meant it to be heard is heard correctly as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. So okay, I've kind of gotten a little bit carried away with that, but this is exactly where I wanted us to go in our discussion of language and environment. So we'll kind of take a look at discriminations. This helps set up the homework on what I would like for you guys to read. I'm not adding in a whole lot here. I know you guys are still working on your summary as well as the proofreading exercise, but I do want us to plan to read, and this is a poem, so this is short. Gloria Anzaldua's To Live in the Borderlands. I'm going to introduce in our next class on Wednesday another poem by Jose Olivares entitled Citizen Illegal. I want us to take a look at, first let's take a look at what Gloria Anzaldúa has to say. She is kind of taking on this idea of language, but she's discussing more of a protesting the judgment, protesting those who want to shame use of language. So read that. That's on page 118. It's only a poem, very short. I think it's like a page or a page and a half. Okay. So we'll be reading that in preparation for our class on Wednesday. I'm also going to post a journal entry. I think this will be journal entry number 5, if I'm correct. That's what the last one I had in my grade book was journal entry number 4. So I'll add this to Brightspace, you guys, for the journal entry. But start to think of the question, right? Do you feel that we are shaped or influenced by our environment? So start to consider that. I'll post it on Brightspace, but we have a journal entry. And that journal entry is going to help us kind of build our paper before you guys go on spring break. So we'll talk again on Wednesday, but I just do want to give you guys a heads up. Yes, you have spring break, but you may be doing some work spring break. I know. I'll let you guys know that moving forward. So for right now, you guys know what you haven't submitted yet. Make sure you get it into me. Let me make sure that this is all I wanted to talk to you guys about today. Hold on. Look, I see my husband getting started up on the phone behind me. So that means that's my cue. But did you guys have any questions? I know we'll see each other again on Wednesday. I think that's all I have for you in reading. I spent a lot of time talking about this today, but next time we see each other, we're going into essay writing and what is the other thing? Oh, discussion on connotation and denotation. Did you guys notice in reading that in talking about Rachel Gentile with the Trayvon Martin case, she was referred to as ghetto by other.
Yeah,
You guys saw that.
I highlighted that.
Yeah, you saw that. I want to talk about that. I wanted to talk about it today, but
yeah,
too about words. What do words mean? And what emotional response do we attach to words? We're going to talk about connotation and denotation next time we see each other. Because I'm thinking what happened, Angela, when you read the word ghetto. Now, we know definition-wise, that's denotation. The word ghetto means something completely different than what it implies when we use the word ghetto. We'll talk about it. We'll have time to go there on Wednesday, but pay attention to all those things. Pay attention to Brightspace. Email me as soon as you can what you haven't turned in. Get your reading done, and we'll talk about all plans, paper assignment before we go on spring break on Wednesday. All right, you guys.
All right.
Did you guys have any questions?
Can you repeat the homework that you said about the poem that we have to read? What page is it on?
Yeah. Okay, so you guys are reading Gloria Anzaldua's To the Borderlands, and this is on page, oh, I said 18. I'm sorry. It's on page 118. 118 in your ARC reader, and that poem is going to be a major point of discussion on Wednesday. So if you do nothing else, make sure you come having read that poem. I'm going to introduce something else for a discussion. Also, Marissa, the homework was a journal entry, and I'll post that on Brightspace, but I'm going to ask you to consider how you've been shaped or influenced by your environment, okay? So I'll post that. And those are the only 2 I'm adding to our calendar today.
Miss Cole.
Yes.
Can I ask you something else? Did you grade the vocabulary? Remember when we had to do vocabulary inside our journal for the other?
So when you say for the other, I know you guys did vocabulary for fixed versus growth mindset, right? I did grade that. I also assigned for you guys to do vocabulary for mother tongue.
Yeah.
Okay, I haven't checked that as of yet.
I think I sent it to you. I'm not sure though.
I'll double check. I'll make a note here to check your email.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so that's all good question. Everything else I'll post to Brightspace, my people.
Okay. Have a nice day.
All
Have
right,
a good
guys,
one,
I'll
Miss
see you
Cole. Be
Wednesday.
safe.
Okay.
Okay.
You too. See you, Benito.
You.